Hi, this is Sean. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. As we start out, I want to ask you a question that may seem a little odd to you, but hang in there. Do you remember the first time you really grieved? Now, the first time I really grieved was when I was 10 and our family moved to the Democratic Republic of Congo. We were not met at the airport by anyone when we flew into the capital city of Kinshasa, but my parents had a place for us to stay. And on the way to this place, my mom said, "Sean, we're going to be staying in a villa." Well, what images are conjured up in your head when you think of villa? I thought of a place that was lovely and someplace that I would like to hang out, maybe even vacation-like. So imagine my shock when my parents turned the key in our door and I saw it was on the other side. There was a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. It was very dim. There was artwork on the wall, but it was crawling. There were lizards that were coming up and down the walls. And at that time, I didn't know that a lizard was your best friend in Congo because they ate mosquitoes and they wouldn't crawl over you at night. But I'd never encountered a lizard before, and so I was scared to death to go to sleep. Well, one of us had to use the bathroom, and it wasn't me, but I heard a scream as the person who turned the light on saw a flurry of cockroaches scoot under the bathtub. And it was at that time that I remember just waves of grief coming over me, as I remembered everything that we had just left in the United States. But the grief that was associated with my memories, that was a beautiful grief because I was leaving something that I longed to go back to. And so that grief was easier to work through. Today I wanted to talk to you about a different sort of grief. And I have come to the realization that we must grieve in order to be able to forgive. And I wanted to talk about 4 reasons why I believe we skip grief as the first step to forgiving those who have hurt us. The first reason is our grief simply doesn't look like we thought it should. I know that I was grieving the loss of my grandparents and everything that was familiar to me in America when I was 10. But I didn't realize that I was grieving in the first stages of forgiveness. My emotions with the grief I felt after the trauma of the loss of the relationship were completely different. So for the first time, I felt deep despair and sadness that I never felt before. I also was wrestling with feelings of revenge, and I hate to even say this, but hatred toward the person who had hurt me. The second reason why I think we skip grief is because we don't want to grieve. We don't want to remember what has happened to us. And part of the intensity of the grief in the beginning stages of struggling to forgive is that we have to remember what has made us grieve in the first place. It's easy to skip grieving and concentrate on the anger, the hatred, the feelings of revenge that we might be feeling, instead of grieving the division and the loss of relationship. The third reason is I think that we somehow feel that we can go around grief. I know somebody in my life who has the philosophy of, if I deny it happened, it didn't happen. Unfortunately, we can deny it as much as we want, but there's no way around grief. We have to go through it. And we only have 2 choices when we grieve. We can grieve poorly and become bitter and stuck, or we can grieve well and find healing on the other side. But we have to slog through it. We also can't rush grief, and we can't determine how long we're going to remain in it. We just have to go through it. There's no way around it. And then the fourth reason that I believe that we skip grief as the first step is that we simply don't understand that grieving well is the doorway to forgiveness. When I was in the initial months after the loss of this relationship that I was struggling to forgive and grieving over, it felt as though I was in the middle of a giant tidal wave. And grief is like a tidal wave. It's unpredictable and it can be violent in its intensity. And you and I can have this belief that we are the only ones who are feeling like this. But I want you to grab your Bible and turn to Psalm 42. This has been a psalm of such comfort for me. It's filled with the imagery of someone who feels as though he's tossing in the sea. He's tossing in a sea of emotions, and he's lamenting the fact that he feels all alone as the waves of grief crash over him. So we're going to read verses 7 and 8. So if you'll take your Bible, I'm reading out of the New American Standard Version. Deep calls to deep at the sound of your waterfalls. All your breakers and waves have rolled over me. And we can feel like we're drowning in those beginning stages of grieving this relationship that is no longer in our lives. But look at what happens in verse 8. Just the very next verse. The Lord will command his loving kindness in the daytime, and his song will be with me in the night. A prayer to the God of my life. The psalmist had this incredible realization as he told himself the truth. He wasn't alone. The Lord was going to be with him. He was going to give him a song in the night. One of my favorite dead guys, that's what I call him, is Charles Spurgeon. And many of you might be familiar with Spurgeon. He was this amazing, prolific writer. He was a pastor and a commentator, and he lived in the 1800s. And this is the profound statement that he has said. I have learned to kiss the wave that throws me against the rock of ages. We can often forget that we're not alone in the churning sea of grief. The ironic thing is that you and I can find Jesus in grief's darkest places if we grieve, reminding ourselves, just as the psalmist did, that he's right there with us and won't let us drown. So, I'm wondering, have you found Jesus in the middle of your grief? Or why do you think that we skip over grief as the first step of forgiveness? I would love to hear your comments, so please leave me one. And if this video was helpful to you, would you please share it with a friend? Come visit me at my website, ShawnLance.com, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much for your time. I know we're all busy, so I really appreciate these few minutes you've given. I'll talk to you later.